about. And to not have that as too much of a dry exercise, we want to combine that with first-hand experiences, both on things that have been achieved as well as on challenges during the implementation. Hence, we have our panelists who will answer some of your questions later on. And last but not least, we obviously also want to provide a bit of guidance, show you where you can find additional materials, and basically get you started to start thinking about how integrity management could complement your efforts to improve water sector performance. Now, we've already had a quick introduction. In addition to that, we will shortly show a very brief introductory video on the toolbox, and then we'll move into a panel discussion. We've already collected some of your questions, which we will start discussing with the panelists. But in addition to that, we want to then open the floor afterwards to basically provide you with an opportunity to ask questions as they emerge and get answers from our panelists. And before we start, I wanted to just quickly summarize a bit what you've provided us as information. So basically, many of you have some basic understanding of the topic integrity already, but we also have some people who've never been exposed to the topic, and the range of experiences is a good spread along kind of the different types of experiences you could have. I'm sorry, I'm switching here in the background, Celia, because I'm not sure where we are with the presentation. Sorry about this. And the motivation why everybody has been joining is basically to start learning about the topic, right? We have a broad range of professionals that also have quite a bit of field experience, but want to start learning about the topic. And in order to get us started and to start getting you involved as well, I would ask you to kindly type into the public chat what you understand under the term integrity. So I would give you about a minute to just really share a bit the key words or what your understanding of this term is, so that we jointly get on board of what we're actually talking about. So kindly, just provide us with inputs, and from there we'll then start transitioning into an overview of the actual approach. Okay, fantastic. Thanks for sharing your understanding of the topic, which I think is very well aligned with how we're looking at this. So what I read out of the responses is a very clear link to transparency and accountability, but also a number of terms that are slightly more subjective in the sense of what is fair what is ethically right to do. So basically, what we are addressing is how do we properly do our work in a way that actually we are accountable for what we're doing. We're using resources in the right way in order to deliver services when we're talking about the water sector. And what Ariane also mentioned in the chat is that this is obviously something where integrity is the positive side of things. If we look at it a bit more from the challenges that we're trying to address, we're talking a lot about risks that we have to tackle. Now, in order to move a bit in the direction of the tool that we want to present, you've already just started seeing the first seconds of a video that we wanted to share. A very short teaser video has been produced that gives you an overview of the Integrity Management Toolbox. I hope you can all see on your screen now already this video setting that says Integrity Management Toolbox. Perfect. It's visible. So what we will do is we'll give you a presentation of this 6 minutes video. And afterwards, we'll start the panel discussion with our panelists. So please enjoy, listen, and start thinking about questions that may emerge as you see this video.
In 2010, the United Nations recognized the right to water and sanitation as a human right. Billions of dollars are invested to manage water resources and develop services worldwide every year. But billions of people still don't have access to safe drinking water or basic sanitation. This is in part because at least 10% of water sector investment is lost to corruption. This means that a lot of money is wasted instead of being used to improve services for the people who need it.
Now, what can we do about this? There are policies in place that are trying to tackle this problem, but what water sector organizations complain is that there is only very little practical guidance on how to actually deal with corruption issues on an organizational level.
What do you do when funds disappear? What do you do when managers have connections but no qualifications for the job? What do you do when you see vehicles being used abusively for private purposes? There is also an increasing public awareness, and organizations want to position themselves as transparent and accountable.
The Water Integrity Network works to improve integrity and reduce corruption in the water and sanitation sector globally. And we do that through various mechanisms, a key one of which is the Integrity Management Toolbox.
The Integrity Management Toolbox supports service providers with a practical change management approach to respond to the challenges they face in their daily businesses. This change process is a step-by-step methodology that includes a participatory workshop to launch and guide the whole process. During the preparation phase, the facilitator adapts the tools for the specific profile and context of the organization. Together with management, integrity gaps and priorities are defined and resources are allocated. A wide range of stakeholders should already be included at the very beginning of the process. It is key to ensure that top management takes leadership, but also to engage staff from different levels to create ownership for the integrity change process.
So in the Integrity Management Workshop, participants get to understand what's the concept of water integrity and how it relates to their organization. The role of the facilitator here is to create a common basic understanding on the consequences of illicit practices and the incentives for an organization to commit to integrity management. In that way, integrity is also then linked to the objectives and values of that organization. Afterwards, they describe their organization's business model. The business model canvas describes how a utility functions. It helps participants to structure and visualize its internal dynamics. It also allows for participants to pinpoint the strengths and weaknesses. In light of their daily operations, participants are able to detect causes, practices, and consequences of non-integrity. They describe the impact on their organization's business model and select the risks they want to address first. Integrity risks can be manipulation of meters and meter readings. It could be manipulation of documents or unclear roles, responsibilities, and processes. It could also be the misuse of key position. The next step is for participants then to determine integrity goals that are related to the negative impact of the risks. So on that basis, they discuss possible tools for addressing these deficiencies. In the last step of the workshop, participants develop a concrete roadmap and agree on how the selected tools will be implemented after the workshop. In a nutshell, who's doing what and until when.
After selecting risk mitigation tools, the staff responsible for implementation moves forward with the roadmap. This phase is at the core of the whole process. Trained local coaches regularly monitor progress and support the utility staff in implementing the selected tools and ensuring sustainability of their efforts.
Over the years, we have successfully implemented the Integrity Management Toolbox, working with partners in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. So as an example, in Khulna in Bangladesh, we worked with the water utility with the Integrity Management Toolbox, and the results were beneficial in two directions. On the one side, it enabled the water utility to improve their revenue, which of course improves their sustainability. On the other side, it led to greater transparency in relation to the bills, and therefore greater understanding from community around the bills and greater accountability towards the institution.
With implementing those practices, they can actually save money, they can reduce corruption, and in this way they will actually have more cash at hand to actually operate and manage their organization. So in that way, it's really a win-win situation, that on one hand we reduce corruption, and on the other hand we can actually put the organization on a better level.
By working with issues of integrity at an organizational level, WIN contributes to a world in which there is better delivery of water services and sanitation, and better meeting of the human right to water and sanitation, and to a world in which there is less vulnerability to issues of corruption and lack of integrity.
To sum it up, the toolbox is unique because it is a step-by-step participatory process that can be repeated over time. It is non-moralizing because instead of finger-pointing, challenges are turned into opportunities. It is flexible and it can easily be adapted. And it positively affects key performance indicators of utilities and enables more and safer investments for donors. Are you interested in applying the toolbox? Explore the WIN website for tools and inspiration, or contact us for material and support.
So this was a very brief introduction into the integrity management approach. Before we open for a broader discussion, we would like to complement that introduction with some experiences. And as the video already mentioned an example from Bangladesh, I would like to start with Kazi Munir Musharraf, who has worked extensively with a number of utilities, including the one in Khulna that was mentioned in the video, and ask him a bit more from your perspective. What are the incentives for utilities in Bangladesh to implement the Integrity Management Toolbox? And also from your experience, where do you see strengths and weaknesses, or strengths and challenges, when it comes to implementing this approach with a utility like Khulna Water? And to respond, if you could unmute your mic, that would be great. Kazi? Kazi, can you hear me? Okay, there seem to be some technical difficulties. As Kazi is not responding, then I would maybe move to the next question towards Arion. Celia, if you could put him on with his video and with the microphone. Hi, Arion. Can you hear me? Perfect. Yes, perfect.
Yes,
thanks a lot, Arion. You worked with a number of water utilities in Albania with the integrity management approach. And this happened under a KfW and SECO-funded investment program. So in your direction, kind of building on the introduction that we just saw in the video, how do you see such an approach being integrated a bit more into investment programs? And yeah, also, how do you see this influencing related decisions? And maybe also, in addition to that question, can you share a bit your views on the strengths and also the challenges in implementing this approach?
So in Albania, what was particular, as you have said, was let's say joining of this KfW funding project with integrity management. Of course, utilities with that take part in this KfW projects, investment projects, they are asked to fulfill some objectives in order, so performance targets, in order to participate into investments. So they should achieve these targets before the investment starts. And there stands also clearly the interest from the side of the utilities, of the utility management, to participate and to, let's say, explore this new experience that was offered to them in order to make whatever was possible to achieve these targets. Because we know that it is necessary, of course, to have commitment, as also in the video that was presented. It is very important to have commitment from the utility top management to implement such an integrity tool. If utility management doesn't want to reduce corruption, doesn't want to improve performance, that is of course not possible thereafter, and cannot be done. But combined with this investment project and the big necessity to use these funds from KfW made also the staff of the management in the utilities think that, okay, we should do something about it, about the improvement of our performance and achieving these targets, and let's say benefit from investment. And here the integrity management tool was used as a let's say a tool to help actually these utilities in achieving the targets. Of course, it is according to our experience, it is something that you think out of the box. Water utility management, I guess everywhere is the same. They think they are very busy normally with their everyday work, and sometimes they do not have the time to think about these things. And also, what is more important to think about these things in a structured way, in order to thereafter to address them properly, to find solution to this problems then, and also where a solution cannot be found, to properly be reported and also find or try to seek for investments from donors. But at least if you pinpoint and identify these issues properly, then you are also able to tell to donors that, okay, or to investors that this is the actual situation, and that's how we want to improve.
Thank you very much, Arion. I picked up a couple of key words. One, you mentioned the importance of making links to performance targets, which are linked to investments, the importance of having commitment from top management, and at the end of the day, also providing a structured process to address integrity issues that at the end of the day should also yield more value for money for investments that are being made under investment programs, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. So on that note, I've seen that Kazibai has joined us without video. Can you hear us, Kazi? Could you unmute your mic if you want to say something? Okay. So if this is not working, I would move on to a question to Serene Malik, as Kazi might still try to connect. So Serene is the programs coordinator of ANEW, which is an umbrella organization for African civil society organizations in the water sector. But Serene has also been working over the past 10 years on anti-corruption and integrity initiatives in Kenya, including work with the Integrity Management Toolbox, but also including kind of a view from the bigger picture on reform processes that have been ongoing in Kenya, and that to some extent have also addressed issues of integrity and corruption. And to Serene, if you can hear us, and to Celia, if you could connect her through video and the audio, I would have the question where you see the opportunity for implementing the integrity management approach in ongoing reform processes, and what would be the benefits of actually using such an approach when reforms are underway in a given country.
Really?
Now we hear you, Serene.
Yes, I know. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. I think reform processes are really important in the sense that integrity management or good governance in the water sector needs to become an active issue.
Serene, it's very choppy. Could you maybe switch off your camera to improve the connection?
Yeah, hang on.
Thanks.
Okay. Is this better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Okay, great. So as I was mentioning, reform processes are important in terms of midwifing the concepts of good governance and integrity within the policy processes. And this was the case in Kenya in 2011, whereby the Kenya government and the Ministry of Water finally accepted and legitimized that, yes, that the water crisis was actually a governance crisis within Kenya, of course, with all the other issues that came with it. As a result, and over the past decade, we've actually seen that a number of the utilities or any kind of regulatory body or any kind of changes within the sector have always been or are trying to align themselves towards good governance and integrity. And this really created an enabling environment for the integrity management toolbox. However, a particular experience, and I think one that would be important for all those that are present, are certain assumptions that we make. Let's not assume that introducing oneself or introducing any kind of integrity management toolbox will be easily welcomed. And this was the case of one or two particular service providers that we had approached to take up the Integrity Management Toolbox. And on the day of the meeting, they actually did not show up. And upon further investigation, we actually found out is that they felt that as it is corruption, there was still quite a bit of stigma around it. And if by any chance they had a finger that was being pointed at them for some reason, which is why they were being advised to have the Integrity Management Toolbox. So there's still quite a bit in terms that needs to be done. And I think this is one of the phases that have been explained in terms of the preparation phase of the Integrity Management Toolbox. Yes, you have an enabling environment within Kenya. Yes, you have the regulator and different financing organizations that are now insisting that service providers and utilities need to have a basic minimum in place before any kind of funding is released to them. But at the same time, we still have some of these, beliefs or certain barriers that still need to be worked through. So that is for now a bit what I would like to share with the group at this point. Over.
Thanks a lot, Serene. So just to pick up a couple of the points that you mentioned and summarize what you said, one, we have the reform process that was ongoing in Kenya, and these processes usually are an opportunity or creating opportunities as they highlight the need for improved accountability and integrity measures. And this is obviously a window of opportunity to start introducing such approaches. But I think what you mentioned is equally important, that it's not necessarily always easy to enter utility with such an approach for different reasons. That can be because there may not be the management buy-in that we need, as Arion mentioned earlier, but also because of certain concerns that such an approach may be associated with, you do something on integrity because you actually have a corruption problem, which is not necessarily the case. And I think this is something where communication is obviously very important. To continue the discussion, I would turn to Lotte Feuerstein from the Water Integrity Network. And aside from the question that I would like to raise to her, I see that Sharon Pollard has also posed a question here in the chat on reducing corruption, and how this could actually be done. Maybe, Lotte, I would also throw that question in your direction. Aside from kind of the question in your direction as an organization that is working on overall improving integrity in water sectors with the Water Integrity Network, what contribution does the integrity management approach make in a country where you're working to actually raise awareness for the topic and to initiate other initiatives? So 2 questions. How can this approach actually help to reduce corruption? Maybe 1 or 2 specific examples. And then 2, how is the approach conducive to actually promoting the topic? And on that note, over to you, Lotte. You're muted, Lotte.
Can you hear me now? Okay, excellent. So on the question of how it contributes to raising awareness on the topic of integrity and anti-corruption in the sector, I think that in particular the positive approach that integrity management takes at integrity and anti-corruption in the sense of turning weaknesses into opportunities from a business perspective and making the topic something that management can actually act on is very positive, because I think it comes down to the title of this webinar. It helps in demystifying the topic from something that is often seen as very abstract and very difficult to talk about, to something that you can actually tackle with simple management tools, and that relates to the daily working practices in a water utility. The point that Sharon mentioned, I think, is directly linked to this. When we talk about reducing corruption, I would like to, for example, draw on one experience that is not directly linked to a water utility, but the Water Sector Trust Fund in Kenya, where we used an adapted approach of the Integrity Management Toolbox. And as part of it, for example, they put into place a complaints mechanism that actually helped them detect corruption cases coming from their own staff. And there are similar experiences by water utilities as well, where people can raise complaints about staff extorting bribes. And then management can take disciplinary action on that. And this can actually be done without a big public process where you have a blame game, but it can actually be handled within the utility or within the managerial and disciplinary processes of the organization that helps actually contain the problem before it explodes in your face, essentially. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lotte. So again, to summarize, what was mentioned, one, kind of using the integrity management approach to highlight that improving integrity can actually be an opportunity for different sector stakeholders is very conducive, and the toolbox provides a suite of very tangible management tools. What Lotte has mentioned in response to the question in the chat is really that providing an overview of the disciplinary actions that are at hand in a utility is one example how that could be done. But the integrity management toolbox provides a wide range of different activities that range from staff rotation, which can obviously also help curbing corruption, all the way to different other types of management tools, including establishing more merit-based human resources measures that basically try to also promote ethical behavior and then also reward good conduct. On that note, I would open the chat for a few additional questions. What I have here in front of me is a number of additional questions that have been raised through the applications, which I will use to continue the discussion. But please, if more questions arise among the participants, please throw them directly into the chat and we'll direct them to the different panelists that we have in this webinar. The first question that still comes from the application round is, and this one I would throw directly at Lotte, who is still here visible, is how such an approach could also be used to detect and expose corruption at a more local level, for example, in municipalities, so in different types of institutions. Lotte, could you maybe share a few thoughts on that point? Celia, could you connect Lotte? Okay, the connection does not seem to be working. Arion, if you can join us.
One, two, three. It's okay.
Yes, Arion, we hear you. Maybe you can weigh in on this question, but if that question is beyond your experience, here's another question on how to actually deal with a situation where corruption also comes from the top of a utility, and how that links to good governance, but also to the integrity management approach.
Sorry, can you repeat the first question, please?
So
I didn't hear that.
the first question was, how can such an approach also help to detect and expose corruption in more localized institutions like municipalities, for example? And the second question is, how can we still make use of such an approach if corruption problems also come from the top of a utility? So if management to some degree is also corrupted.
So what, maybe I start with the second question, is more easy for me. So what we have done in order also to foresee this issue, because of course, if there are interest involved, also the high level staff or top management do not make exception from that. And what we have tried to do from the very beginning is also to involve the supervisory boards, to involve administrative councils of water utility, and also what are called in Albania the owners of water utility, which are the municipalities. So, but we didn't have this issue of, in Albania at least, this issue of, as I heard also from the other colleague, that high management refuses to work with this issue. On the contrary, sometimes we find and we see that top management is more interested than the high politicians. Or what we experienced is that we saw that, for example, it is this risk. I think in Albania, but also in other utilities all over the world, that influence from politics in, for example, staff rotation, staff appointments, etc. exist. And this was also addressed by top management of water utilities. So in this respect, I cannot say the contrary. So during our experience, we have promptly involved the administrative council and municipal representatives, mayors, to be properly informed of at the beginning what are the risks of the utility, how they should address, and also what they could assist in, if they can assist in this process, but also for being involved and being, let's say, properly informed about everything that was going on within the utility, to have everything clear, because at the end they are the real, let's say, owners of the utility, and should know what is happening.
Great. Thank you very much, Arion, for that reflection. So what I understand from what you're saying is involving also the supervisory bodies of water utilities in order to make sure that there's oversight and actually support for the initiative. And then, Secondly, also looking at which of the tools that are within the toolbox when it comes to staffing could be used to address some staff-related corruption issues. Fantastic. I think Lotte has joined us again. Maybe do you want to weigh in on the question of how such an approach can also be used to address corruption issues at a more localized institutional level, for example, in municipalities or different types of institutions?
Yeah, sure. So we have used the approach in different types of organizations. I was just talking about the Water Sector Trust Fund in Kenya, but also other public institutions. That always requires some adaptation of the approach, and in particular of the risks and the possible tools. So you need to review what specific risks that organization where you want to apply the approach may be exposed to, which is related to the functions of that organization. And also which tools can they use or not, which also relates very strongly to which extent is it, for example, a closed organization that primarily uses tools applied by internal staff and to some extent in contractual relations with other organizations and business partners, and to which extent is it an open organization that works, for example, more in a multi-stakeholder way. So there has, for example, been one adaptation for river basin organizations, which are very different in that sense because they work in a multi-stakeholder way. I think for a municipality, if you wanted to apply it across different departments of a municipality, that would be possible. But again, it would require, on the one hand side, a clear anchoring within the administrative procedures of that municipality, in the sense that if, for example, at the municipal level, different departments have performance contracts or some kind of other set of functions that they have to deliver on, which they need to report on towards the mayor or the town clerk, it should become part of that set of functions, so that they have an incentive to actually progress on implementing the toolbox. And then again, for different departments, you would probably have to adapt the specific risks and tools to the functions of that department. And it would be good to also have some kind of knowledge exchange and peer learning process at the municipal level, where the different departments can exchange on their experiences in implementing the toolbox and learn from one another in that process. And again, it would be good to have some kind of other incentives for them to actually put efforts into implementing the toolbox, so that there's recognition at the municipality level for the department that is doing it particularly well. I also want to use this opportunity to address one other question that was raised, which is what do you do if the top of an organization is actually corrupted? And to be very honest, in such an instance, I think, yes, the integrity management approach can give opportunities to mid-level managers, mid and senior level managers in an organization to do things better. But it is clearly not the most appropriate way of addressing corruption and integrity in that kind of situation, because it essentially builds on the willingness of management to address the problem. And if management is not interested at all in addressing the problem, but is instead part of the problem, then there are other more effective ways of countering corruption and promoting integrity. And it might be more appropriate to look at what can other stakeholders from outside the organization actually do to influence the organization, rather than trying to address the problem from within the organization. So there it might be more appropriate to look at ways of actually community monitoring and third-party oversight and sort of public pressure, and to look at how can you collaborate with regulators or other external oversight authorities to address the problem. Of course, that always means it still makes sense to also coordinate and collaborate with the people within the organization who have an interest in doing the right thing. But actually bringing on board other actors makes a lot of sense in such a situation.
Thanks a lot, Lotte. So to summarize, for other types of institutions like municipalities, kind of the stepwise approach of the Integrity Management Toolbox works well, but the content needs to be adjusted. The types of risks will become different, depending also on the context and the mandates, the functions of these institutions, as well as the measures that can be taken, because obviously regulations and the legal setting need to be taken into consideration. And I think the latter point that you mentioned, very important. If we're looking at a situation where top level is corrupted, investigative measures need to be taken. The integrity management approach is much rather a tool that helps those who actually want to tackle the problem in doing that more effectively. I'm looking here at our panel, and I see that Munir is around. Can you try your microphone, switch it on, and see if you can talk to us, Kazi? All right, this still does not seem to be working. Then I would turn to Sareen Malik with another last question that was also raised here in the chat, which again links to challenges of corruption coming from top levels. Sareen, if you think of the integrity management approach, how big do you see the potential of starting to work on minor corruption issues in an institution where you have top-level corruption challenges as a ways to start actually triggering a process to reflect on the problem and then gradually move towards the bigger problems? So basically, is there a way to start looking at small corruption problems at a lower level and use that as an opportunity to start creating awareness about higher level corruption problems? Sareen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, Yannick, if you could repeat that. I got disconnected for a minute.
So one of the key questions that is also being raised here in the chat is, what do we do if we have corruption as a problem that comes from the top? Now, what we've already discussed and what Lotte highlighted is, in such situations, there's obviously other measures. But if we're looking at a utility, for example, that would be willing to engage in an integrity management process, even though there may be mid to high level corruption problems. Do you see a potential in an approach that starts tackling smaller problems, that provides measures to address smaller problems, and then basically gradually continue addressing the topic to reach top level corruption challenges as well?
Absolutely. And to pick up a bit and to add on to what Lotte and Arion have already mentioned, this has a lot to do with the alignment of incentives within the organization. A lot of the cases and a lot of the results that have come out from these integrity management toolbox exercises point towards what is a big misalignment of incentives. A And if that can already be tackled, in addition to, of course, putting systems in place where whistleblowers are protected, where there is some sort of discretion in terms of how some of these cases are being handled. So starting small, but certain facilities, yes, definitely need to be put in place within the organization to start dealing with it. There was a case where Mowasco, I believe, Mombasa Water, which is, for those who are here, which is the second largest water utility in Kenya, whereby the managing director was spending 3/4 of their time dealing with disciplinary issues and cases. So that pointed a lot towards in terms of what was it that needed to be put in place. And again, and I think this is really important to stress, when they analyzed a bit what were the disciplinary issues or what were the disciplinary cases that were coming in, it had a lot to do with, again, a disconnect from the various departments, a disconnect at the value in terms of what are the understanding of the values within an organization. Case in point, you will walk into a lot of utilities whereby you will see their service charters and their values. And for sure, you will not miss one saying accountability and integrity and zero tolerance towards corruption. But how many actually adhere to it or actually have a full understanding of that or actually see in terms of how is this of value to me and to my post is still something that is wanting and that needs to be worked on. Moving up now, I think there's also in terms of, yes, Lotte is right, mentioning external stakeholders, such as civil society organizations that can organize social accountability exercises or put the utility on the spot. But you also have what is the strength and what is the role of existing supreme audit institutions that are there. Now, the case of Kenya, all right, it has taken, yes, decades, but there are a number of supreme audit institutions that are there and that are working, even though in terms of giving a sense of if there is some sort of malfeasance, we at least know where it would be reported and where it is going to be recorded. Whether action will be taken, that is a different point. But the fact that it is actually being recorded somewhere is already a start in terms of putting pressure on change. Thank
Fantastic. So to sum this up, the integrity management approach is obviously just one piece in the puzzle, but it can be a very constructive and productive piece in order to actively address some of the challenges. Now, as we're nearing the end of this webinar, we would like to still raise a very short question into the group, which is how you see yourselves using the integrity management approach. You should all see the answering options, and I would kindly ask you to just indicate how you most likely see yourselves using this approach.
How do you think you could use the integrity management approach in your work as a multiplier promoting water integrity in water sector organizations? As a chain officer management process. As an international actor wanting to integrity management activities into program and projects.
Kazimir, I hear your voice. Can you hear us? Okay. Disconnect. Okay.
So thanks a lot for sharing a bit how you see this tool being used. As this is just meant as a short teaser webinar, we have, on the one hand, quite a number of people who seek to use or who seek to act as a multiplier in promoting water integrity and basically trying to push this through different types of water sector organizations. For those of you who look at the approach in that sense, I would very highly recommend that you start exploring options to maybe join also the broader Water Integrity Network, which actually is a network organization that works with a range of organizations and is always interested to engage with people who actually want to make a contribution to advancing that topic. For those of you who are interested in using the approach as trainers or facilitators, I would very much suggest that you visit the WIN website in order to explore the detailed content that is available, as well as the facilitation guidance, but that you also sign up for the WIN newsletter, where usually opportunities for training of trainers and facilitators, but also communities of practice are circulated. And lastly, for those international actors or also national NGOs who want to integrate the integrity management activities into programs and project proposals, again, to you as well, I think there's very much interest from WIN's side to provide support for such activities, or to basically, also engage in joint projects if that is suitable. So also to you, a big call to get in touch with the Water Integrity Network. We will share an email address through the chat, which is either info@win-s.org. And Lotte will also share another email address that is linked directly to the tools. So in that sense, you are more than welcome to engage and really use this as an opportunity to start working with the approach, but also working with the Water Integrity Network. Lastly, unfortunately, this doesn't work because of the current technical constraints. We will share the link to the WIN website, to the tools section that is providing detailed guidance both for facilitators as well as for organizations who want to use the integrity management approach. Please visit this website. It's very informative, well-structured, easy to navigate, to get more of an in-depth understanding. On that note, I would like to thank everybody for participating in this first webinar, which was unfortunately also a bit affected by the corona situation. We do have a challenge as the webinar capacities are very much overused at the moment, but we hope that you still got some insights. As a last question, we would like you to respond to 2 questions to evaluate this webinar, which Celia will share with you through the survey function, ideally prior to hanging up. Thank you very much, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you apply the approach sometime soon. Bye.
Bye.